welcome to everyone to the Together Take Back Democracy Tour Scotland. I'm Alan Miller, I'm a co-founder at Together, and I'm very pleased to be here in Glasgow. And tonight in the room, we've got a fantastic group of people from Glasgow. In fact, stand up everyone and tell everyone at home, in Britain, across the UK and around the world who are on the live stream, we're on this tour, and what we're going to do, Glasgow? That's what we're going to do. Fantastic. Now, thank you, guys. You can sit down for a bit, and we're going to have everyone who wants to speak will get a chance this evening. You can basically come to speak once we've done some of the presentations. And we're really pleased tonight because we've got a great lineup for you. In a minute, we're going to speak to Maggie Oliver. Many of you will know Maggie, her book in 2019 and her important work as a whistleblower, displaying a lot of courage and commitment and passion, which is something that we know that the British public, the United Kingdom, have got. We know that Scottish people have got courage and commitment and passion, but we know that our technocrats have spent decades trying to suffocate and stamp much of that out in an anti-democratic purge, and that was seen on steroids during lockdowns and now subsequently with those terrible things, emergency traffic orders taken straight out of the COVID emergency book, shutting our streets down, calling them 15 and 20-minute cities. 20-minute neighbourhood, they call it in Glasgow, but what we know it means are, more surveillance cameras, more CCTV, more bollards, more fines, millions of fines in the last 3 to 4 years is coming up to in Glasgow. We know that, almost 10% reduction in hospitality in the first year. We know that we've seen on the high streets where we are, Sauchiehall. Now, this brilliant venue, the Garage, Glasgow, next to it, along the street, peppered with shop fronts that are closed. Glasgow, the place where hospitality and music and entertainment for tourists and for locals and for everyone in Britain was so important, is being decimated by technocrats who are obsessed with net zero and cash cowing their vision of a 20-minute city where we don't have the services for people, we don't have productivity and growth, we don't have provision of what we need, but we do have checkpoint Charlies, all of course which will be underpinned by more digital ID if the technocrats have their way. Now, I just first of all want to say that thank you very much to Donald MacLeod, because this venue, the Glasgow Garage, the Garage at Glasgow, is just fantastic. We're in it. So I want to thank the team live to everyone. Everyone give them a big round of applause. All the production guys, they're really, really professional. In Britain, we have the best technicians in the world. They go to LA, they go to Asia. They're trained in Britain, right? We got brilliant people. We got brilliant roadies. We got people that in the music industry, in TV and film, in podcasting, broadcasting, and our live venues. These places where people come together. These are the heartbeats of our cities. This is what creates regeneration, why people locate themselves in apartments. It's why other businesses want to be located. It's where the best and the brightest want to be, because there's an exciting dynamic when new things happen. If you think about how Britain's known, you think about things like all of our music trends. If you think about from the Beatles on, every music icon, if you think about hotels, if you think about all the soft power that we promote internationally, all of that comes from the dance floor, from hospitality, from music, and from our great entrepreneurs. And having Donald here tonight at this venue and having Michael Bergson is really, really important. Someone who's kind of carved out in Glasgow and Edinburgh a real definition of iconoclastic venues that is really the backbone of Britain. When we talk about small, medium-sized enterprises and hospitality, it's where the public come together, where we exchange ideas, where we fall in love, sometimes we fall out of love, where, we really come together as a people. In the same way that the farmers are the backbone of Britain, our hospitality venues, our pubs, historically, have been places where we can have our own parliament, where we discuss things, where we have a row, where we can come to know who we are. And we've lost so many of them, and they're under so much pressure. And we've seen what's happened when you have a council like Glasgow City Council obsessed with limiting and suffocating and restricting in the name of ideology. And at a time when we need productivity in Scotland and in Britain, it's shocking. It's shocking in the city of the Scottish Enlightenment, where only down the road, Adam Smith was the chair of moral philosophy at Glasgow University. And Wealth of Nations was created, where the American Constitution was informed, galvanized by ideas of reason and rationality and human commitment. The American moment, forged and shaped from Scotland, that in a city that's so important, these things are happening. And ladies and gentlemen, which you're not allowed to say in some places anymore, ladies and gentlemen, we all know who we're talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, the tide is turning. The tide is turning, but we need to keep pushing, because we might have seen that the national government, Labour in Britain, who have had 16 U-turns, but we know that the U-turns aren't all that, are they? So we know that we've had a big impact, and that's important to recognise, around the farmers and a U-turn on the IHT and everyone that stood together with our farmers. We've seen that on digital ID. They couldn't just impose mandatory right to work digital ID. We all pushed back, millions are against it, but they're forging ahead. And now Darren Jones has said we're like doubling down, and we know with one login, that's a system and an infrastructure they want to have us all on there. We know with the discussions around a social media ban, that's the way they want every adult to digitally verify themselves. We know that with facial recognition, none of us have agreed to it. It's not been any manifesto, just like digital ID, but here we are, Police Scotland and across England and Wales, facial recognition happening. We know that with the Children's Wellbeing School Bill, a digital unique identifier being imposed again and again and again. We see it. Fortunately, our veterans are smart, a tiny uptake with digital ID. We need to keep fighting together. And this Take Back Democracy tour is saying to everyone, in the run-up to the 7th of May elections, in the run-up to questions about what will happen in Scotland, we need to put digital ID and free speech and juries and the right to appeals at the front of us, and make sure that the councillors know, prospective councillors, that our vote depends on this, and that all the main parties and all the new parties that are emerging, that we will hold them to account and we make our voices heard. Now, I'm very excited about what's happening with this new populism moment, this disruption, and it will happen across the board, right? But in the end, it's going to be up to all of us, the great British public, people in Scotland, England and Wales and Northern Ireland, to make sure we keep the pressure up. Because like free speech in the Constitution, so informed from Scottish Enlightenment, but like free speech, the battle is never fully won. Because there are always people who think we are scum and we are not deserving of free speech, of privacy, of rights of conscience. Only they are. Free speech for me, but not for thee. And so even from the times of Jefferson and Adams and others, there were raging debates about free speech, technocrats who didn't want people to have enough of it. But in Britain, and this is really important, many fought and died, many were tortured, people like William Tyndale, to actually have free expression, to have freedom of press. From Peterloo onwards, we know that battles of the Enlightenment, the diggers and the levellers, and the First and Second World War, and civil rights, and all of these questions, universal suffrage for everyone, those that are attempting to shut that down now, and actually, I think it was Andy, I've forgotten his name now. Imitation is the best form of flattery. Next weekend, there's a demonstration where they've nicked our name, actually. They call themselves the Together Alliance. But their big beef is that people in Britain are not going along with their ideas. And their big beef is that they're now calling millions of people across Britain far right and racist because they don't share their own ideas. But we should remember, ladies and gentlemen, that for the last 300 years, and certainly for the last 150. And since we got universal suffrage and people fighting and dying for the rights for freedom, that has been so that everyone can express those ideas, so we can thrash out debates democratically. We can talk about everything from our borders, to what's going on in our schools, to what's going on in our streets, to what's happening in our economy. And that we can say things and we can criticize and we can ridicule. And yes, we can blaspheme. And we're adults and we can deal with it. And we're not going to be shuttered. And we're not going to be shuttered by the technocrats that rule things, or by people who pretend they represent everyone and call people names in a bid to shut them up. So a message to everyone tonight: we're going to keep fighting for the fundamental rights that we believe everyone should have. Those we really disagree with and those we agree with. The universal rights of freedom of speech, of conscience, of the rights to protest, for our liberty, and to stand together. And then we've got a digital Bill of Rights that says that we must never have to verify to participate. So, I'm going to not say anything too much more right now. We're going to have a really interesting panel. We're going to talk to them all. In a minute, I'm going to get Maggie Oliver on. She's waiting patiently. We're very lucky because she's abroad at the moment. But to kick off the night, I'm very pleased to say that, and it was great when I found this out, because we knew about the wee Glesga poet, Emma Armstrong. We knew about her, and we'd been watching her things, and we were delighted. We thought she was brilliant. I thought, oh, get in touch and see if you'd do something for us. And I'm a bit nervous whenever you speak to someone. And she's like, yeah, oh, yeah. She goes, I really like Together. I've been a supporter for a long time. And I was like, yes, that's what we like to hear, because she's brilliant and we love her. So give a big Glasgow round of applause for Emma Armstrong.
Good evening, Glasgow. Good evening. I would like to kick things off with a poem called Digital ID. It's a no for me. There's a brainwave that's been suggested, and it's going to stop illegal immigration. Well, that's what they say to disguise the fact, is to control and track the population. So here's a message to you, Starmer. I'll keep this poem short and sweet, and forgive me for stating the obvious, but if you want to limit illegal feet, we live in an island, so just get our navy to block our shores and our ports. Am I the only one that wonders why these boats are still allowed to float? Patrol the seas and send them home, or at least do not let them pass, and eventually they'll get the message and have no option but to turn back. Please do not believe that digital ID is going to make one blind but a difference, that this might make arrivals think twice and choose to keep their distance. It'll just be another system that gets exploited and then scammed, whilst monitoring the subservient majority, because that was always their plan. And after we didn't buy that first ploy, next, it's for organisation, requirement for all directors. You're now part of a surveillance nation. So if you want my advice for what it's worth, reject any suggestion of digital ID. Your phone, your passport, we're too tracked already, and that's more than enough for me. Thank you.
I think I can do this sitting down now. Good. Can you hear me? Great. So now we're going to welcome Maggie Oliver to come on, and hopefully we'll see her on a screen. Maggie, how are you doing?
I'm all right, thanks, Alan. Can you hear me?
Hi. Can you hear us clearly, Maggie?
I can
Great.
hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So, well, you're very popular in the room, so that's great. And you're very popular across Britain. And I suppose I wanted to start on that, really, because it wasn't so popular as you explained.
I can't hear you, Alan. You've gone.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but you're fairly quiet. I've taken my headphones out, but
Okay.
I can just about hear you.
So I was just saying
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you really loud and clear. Very good. Yeah.
You're very, very quiet. Can you speak into your microphone? Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me, Maggie? Yeah. Okay. hopefully I'm not too much in the way. You can all see, yeah? Great. Okay, so I'm doing the thing you should never do, which is stand up with your back to the audience and the camera. But I think the thing is, Maggie, that you're very popular now with millions of people. But when you started this journey out, you weren't popular. It was very difficult. And part of the theme of our tour and of tonight is bravery. And you're a whistleblower. And it's something that goes to the heart of something that we're also concerned about, our children and young girls and what that's meant. So just, if you will, just to start off with, we know you've got the foundation, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but you went through a whole, and in your book, which is very good for anyone who hasn't read it, do get it, but you go through the experience, even with your colleagues saying, look, why don't you just, I think the expression was, do your job, sit down, stop this now, because all the avenues you'd gone against, people didn't want to deal with it. The IPCC, because you were still an officer, you brought it to Andy Burnham. He'd been very critical about what had happened with Hillsborough, but he didn't act on it at the time. Just tell us how you actually do that when it seems like all the avenues are closed. Just how do you get the inspiration to do that, if you would, to begin with?
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, I resigned in the end of 2012, after spending about 15 months as a serving police officer. As you quite rightly say, going to everybody. You know, I saw dozens and dozens of children, now turns out thousands of children, but I saw 2 jobs when I worked in Greater Manchester Police, where children were just being cast aside, thrown to the wind. We had 97 child rapists that we knew were abusing children. We'd identified over 3 dozen children. I came back to work after my husband died, and that job had been buried. Not one of those abusers was ever prosecuted. And I was horrified, but I didn't have any evidence. And then roll forward 5 years, and I went on the Rochdale case. And I'm whizzing through this. But I saw the same, what I consider gross criminal neglect. And at that point, Alan, I didn't believe that the chief constable or the government or anybody knew what was happening. Naively, I thought it was one lazy officer. It took me a couple of months to work up the courage to decide I was going to speak out within the job. And I spent over a year as a serving police officer going to everybody, head of public protection, head of serious crime, chief constable, the Home Office, the IOPC, the Children's Commissioner. And I became very, very ill, but I was threatened that if I went public, I would go to prison, basically, because as a serving police officer, you sign the Official Secrets Act. But I looked into my soul, and I have got children of my own, and I always say when I do speaking engagements, you know, when you join the police, you promise to uphold the law, to act with integrity, to protect the vulnerable, to uphold fundamental human rights. So when I'm being told, Maggie, you're quite right there, Alan, I was told, Maggie, senior officers make decisions, and as a junior officer, you do as you're told. And if you can't do that, you're in the wrong job. And I said, and I still say, I never promised to do as I was told. I promised to uphold the law. And if I see 50, 60, 70-year-old men raping 12-year-old children, wherever they are from, it's my duty to call that out. So you know, what you just said about freedom of speech really, really hits home with me. And, you know, I have still often been accused of being racist because the kind of cases that I was talking about were predominantly Pakistani Muslim men and very vulnerable white children. But again, for me, Alan, it didn't matter the ethnicity of the rapists. It didn't matter that those children came from difficult backgrounds. That meant that we had more duty to protect them. For me, this was about the law, and the law has to be equal. You know, it doesn't matter if it's a Catholic priest, Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, a football coach, or even an uncle. If a man is raping a child, they are guilty of child abuse in our country. And all I was saying was that. But what I didn't anticipate was the whole establishment trying to pretend this wasn't happening. But I guess what I did, I faced my fear, and that was because of my own children. You know, you're quite right. You mentioned Hillsborough there, and that was actually going on in the background when I was, you know, very, very ill with trying to decide what to do on this. And I'd seen for 30 years families fighting for the truth to be told, that their loved ones weren't, you know, drunken yobs who had caused their own death. It had been bad decisions that had caused that tragedy. And yet there'd been 30 years of lies and cover-ups and no accountability. And I just decided that wherever this journey led for me, and I never expected it to lead where I am now, but I wanted to know that my kids knew I'd told the truth. And so I left the police, I resigned. I lost my home, I lost my income, I lost a career that I loved. And I decided I was going to go public. I went to Panorama, who were in the thick of Jimmy Savile, couldn't make a programme, and they put me onto File on 4. And that programme went out in 2013. And really, it's never left me behind. But there's still a long, long way to go.
So just on that long way to go, there have been two different types of inquiries, and one of the things that you've made very explicit is the problem that the public has an expectation that when there are recommendations, for instance, in an inquiry, and we know now that in Scotland the government are saying they're going to have an inquiry, but what tell us about your concern about recommendations and your current judicial review, what you're doing, your legal situation, just so we're all clear about that, please.
Yeah, well, I started my own charity finally in 2019, the Maggie Oliver Foundation, and we've helped nearly 5,000 victims and survivors since then. But I was part of ICSA, which is the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse. And anybody who's in your audience, I'm sure will know that it lasted 7 years, £200 million, 7,500 victims and survivors told their stories under in the belief that recommendations at the end of that 7 years would bring change. And when it was launched, Alan, Theresa May said it was a once in a generation opportunity to hold those who have failed children accountable, to bring change. And so we had ICSA, and 20 recommendations were made at the end, which was now well over 3 years ago. And yet those recommendations have not been implemented. So what my charity did, we managed to get funding from 2 individuals who believed in what we were trying to do. And then all of last year, we've put in pre-action protocol letters. We've got a team of lawyers. We've got a barrister. And in the beginning of March, we took the government to the High Court, and we won what I didn't realise at the time, but I know now was a historic win, because the judge there said, as you just said, Alan, that after all those promises over 7 years from Conservative government and from Labour as well, that the country has a legitimate expectation that those 20 recommendations would come into law. But recommendations in a national inquiry are not worth the paper that they are written on, because a government can simply ignore them. Under the law, they do not have to bring anything in. So we're fighting. It's very much, a David and Goliath situation. But for us and for me, it's as important that the country understands what the government is doing, as we can't force them to bring these recommendations in. But what I want to make sure is that the country knows that the government is not intending to bring them in. And as we go into 2 new national statutory inquiries, I want people to understand, before they put their faith and hope and re-traumatize themselves in going through another inquiry, that at the end of that process, the government can simply say, we're not going to bring these recommendations in. We don't have to. You can't force us. And for me, that's a gross abuse of power. And everything I'm trying to do is to raise awareness, to shame those who should know better to do what the country, what victims, what survivors expect them to do. But it is like pushing a juggernaut uphill. But I do think that keep chipping away like you're doing, like, we are bringing into the open what those in power would far rather remain hidden in the corners.
Well, I know that there's lots that we can talk about, and I spoke to you, I said I think we should do a live stream together and a proper podcast interview, because we're going to get on in a minute to some of the issues here. But my last real question to you is around this theme that we've seen. There's a protest happening this weekend down in London where people are being called racist for raising issues around some of these themes. We know that the question of policing without fear or favour has come into question in the last 2 years, where people are talking about a two-tier policing, where some people are policed in a very particular way. In fact, 5 years, whether it was if you were being kettled because you were challenging lockdowns, other protests that happened at the same time were not treated in the same way. And the same with the treatment towards social media posts. People are not treated in the same way. It depends on a partisan view. And I suppose the question to you, as you say, we've got these 2 more inquiries, and we saw a COVID inquiry that wasn't fit for purpose. It's ridiculous, not even considering lockdowns. So now we've got a Labour government in England that didn't want to have an inquiry, voted against it, and now it's going to do it, but it won't be happening until after the next election, whatever that's going to mean. And we've got one in Scotland. Just tell us some of your thoughts and reflections on what you'd like to see from the public. I know you've got your foundation, it's very important, and people should know about it, the Maggie Oliver Foundation charity. But what would you like to see from the point of view of an engaged public on this issue that you can leave us with, Maggie, please?
I mean, I would ask everybody here who is on socials to follow me on LinkedIn and X. And what you just said there, Alan, for me, the main thing that I want to do is hold senior public servants criminally to account. And I have started it's called Action for Accountability Limited. That will come into play after the judicial review. But, I believe that our system is completely broken. I focus on the criminal justice system. Trying to do away with jury trials is another way of trying to take power away from the people. If you look at my LinkedIn today or yesterday, Alan, a guy there that we've been supporting for several years, he's been waiting for a trial, and then it was delayed last year. Yesterday was meant to start again. It's been delayed again. And possibly till 2028. And yet they can, arrest Lucy Hall today. She can be in prison tomorrow for putting naughty words on Facebook or on X. That, for me, is an abuse of power. It's an attempt to silence us and make us frightened of speaking out. Well, you know what? I think we use our voices. We stick together. People power is what will bring change. And my job is to raise awareness, to give survivors and victims a platform to show that these are not isolated mistakes. This is a deliberate intention to control our country. And, it's like the lunatics running the asylum to me. I don't think I'm saying anything that most ordinary, decent people don't believe and don't feel. And I will continue to do this until there is a breath in my body, to be honest, Alan, because without it, I fear for the future anyway, but I do think we fight until the death, and change will come too slowly, but bit by bit, we will win this battle.
Well, Maggie Oliver, I do want to say that I think more than anyone, you've really brought this issue on, right into the heart of everyone's homes. And I would like to personally thank you, but I think everyone in the room would like to thank you on behalf of the whole of the United Kingdom.
Thank you for inviting me. And good.
A shining beacon of bravery and someone who puts a principle before before their own personal concerns and considerations. If only we had more people like Maggie Oliver as leaders in Britain. Thank you so much, Maggie.
Thank you. Thanks, Alan.
And as they say, that might be a tough act to follow, but I'm not concerned because I know Donald MacLeod of the MacLeod clan, Clan MacLeod, is going to be fantastic. So please give a warm welcome to Donald MacLeod.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the iconic and world-famous garage. My name, as Alan has said, is Donald Cameron MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod, ME, owner, rather curator for 3 decades of this historic grand establishment. But as importantly, I'm also a passionate, at times often not, a very outspoken supporter of Scotland's ailing nighttime economy and live music scene. A voice of this fantastic industry that for many do not want to hear, especially politicians. But silenced, and that's why I'm here speaking tonight, to get it up them. Yeah. It's a wee bit nippy tonight, and I can't afford to put the heating on. In order to warm up, I'd like you to put your hands together and give a warm Glasgow welcome to Alan Miller in the Together Declaration. And another round of applause. This is going to warm me up for the other speakers. We had Maggie Oliver, brilliant. We've got Emma, the Glesga Poet, fantastic. And we're going to be followed by Michael Bergson. And least but not least is Lachlan and all the team here at the garage. They've done a great job in turning the place around. As an excited, yeah, I'm going for it. Don't you worry about it. Yeah. As an excited young punk in 1978, when the garage was called Shuffles, I used to burst through the doors and shuffle up these stairs to pogo around this very hall. I did. Only 3 punk tracks would be played, wedged in between such hits as Staying Alive and I Will Survive, which, given the circling gangs of Stanley carrying Neds, was an endurance test to say the least. The old balcony up there was where you took your Saturday night Susie Sue for a bit of, a wee bit, yeah, that's it, hanky-panky. But only if the Kipper-Tide bouncers could stand and watch. Just as well, there was no mobile phones or CCTV back then, as I was up there every weekend. I never thought for 1 second that 16 years later I would be taking over the place. And this weekend, the garage celebrates its 32nd birthday, a truly fantastic and remarkable achievement, considering I only expected it to run for 5 years tops. But the happiness and pride, well, I can tell you other stories later, don't you worry. But the happiness and pride I feel in reaching this remarkable milestone has been tarnished, eroded, and I've never felt so politically disenfranchised as I do now, or so racked with worry about the future. For a venue, a street, a city that survived the Devil's Decade, the 1930s, a terrible time which included the Great Depression, World War II and the Blitz, and all the other turbulent times since, including the more recent banking crisis and, of course, the awful COVID pandemic lockdowns. Never has this venue, this street, this city, and indeed this country been so polarised, divided, and faced with such economic uncertainty. Never has our nighttime and hospitality industries been in such a parlous, fragile and precarious position, with most businesses now teetering on the edge of the abyss. Since I spoke at this event 2 years ago, things haven't got better. They've gotten worse, a lot worse. Closures of pubs, clubs and grassroots music venues, despite receiving rates relief, have accelerated, not slowed down or stopped. Footfall continues to fall, especially midweek. Spend per head also continues to drop. Rateable value for businesses have shot through the roof, and the relief package offered by the Scottish Government has been as woeful as it has been selective, with many larger employers and venues like mine, like the garage, excluded. Some places have seen the rateable values rise as much as 300%. Punishing and disproportionate LEZ is still in place, and there are still no nighttime exemptions. Bike lanes and bus gates, the avenues projects have increased, not dwindled. A road-tearing carnage of congestion that has forced many visitors and locals away from this great city. Potholes and ongoing roadworks proliferate right across the city. I did laugh at the meme which said fuel prices are so high that even taxi drivers are taking the shortest route. Then I thought, not in Glasgow. Is there no shortcuts available? Because every which way you turn, there are fucking roadworks or bollards. Parking spaces have been reduced, but parking charges have increased at eye-watering levels. Again, right across the city. Shameless highway robbery. Motorists are being deliberately targeted and priced off the road, and there's still no reliable integrated public transport system in place. This, of course, is all complemented with a rise in low-traffic neighbourhoods and an explosion in the building of student accommodation blocks. Now, I like students, but my God, do they need to have so many places to live in? You know, they don't. It seems every empty space or building is a target. Mission creep, I call it. Policies designed to keep everyone in their place and where a car is not required. More political contract to seduce the stupid and ill-informed. That's what they think of us. As for public consultation, that's a non-existent joke. And if it is offered by either the Scottish Government or the Council, and they don't like the results of the poll, they just ignore it and press ahead regardless. As happened with LEZ and recently with the approved demolition of a bowling club in Finniston. Despite a stonking 96% objection rate, the Council ignored the result and are crashing on with the building of a 6-storey block of flats. As far as I'm aware, there's never been any public consultation exercise carried out over the rollout of bus gates, bike lanes, LTNs, and the implementation of a citywide 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. Nor has any compensation ever been offered to businesses harmed, some terminally so, by those tax-funded, ridiculously expensive, idealistic, utopian rollouts. The mission creep of digital ID is another one. Do you really want the government, UK and Scottish, to know everything about you? I certainly don't. None of them can be trusted to run to the shops, let alone run the country. So I certainly won't trust this bunch of lying incompetents to look after all my personal details, including banking and spending. Would you? This smacks of Big Brother and a further erosion of our civil liberties and a honeypot for hackers. On all political levels, Council, Scottish Government and Westminster, it is a shocking abuse of power and contemptuous of the electorate who pay their wages. It doesn't stop there, though. At a recent political hustings organised by the Scottish Hospitality Group, Daniel Johnston, MSP, Labour shadow biz spokesman, was asked that if he was an MP, would he have supported Starmer the Hammer and Rachel Thieves' rise of employers' national insurance, a hand grenade policy which blew apart many in the sector and severed the trust business had in them? He incredibly said he would. He would have to, because if he hadn't, he would have had the whip removed. What? It was the same answer he gave when he asked why he and his colleagues didn't vote against, but abstained from voting over the SNP's budget. It's a joke. Quite apart from the fact that many politicians, not Daniel, I hate to mind, seem to like the whip, and probably gimp masks and stilettos as well. It seems they would rather face the wrath of their political whip than be brave and principled and stand up for those who elected them in. It's a shocking, absolutely appalling, and further proof that far too many are seduced by the rich trappings of power and not the actual job at hand. It's also a reason why so many people don't know who to vote for and feel so disenfranchised and disengaged from politics. Their voices are not being heard or listened to. They are being ignored as they scream passionately into the void, slowly eaten away and boxed in by undemocratic stealth and idealistic policies from crackpot politicians who are never properly held to account, are lacking in empathy, decency, and think they know better. Now, in 2024, we asked for a rates reduction. They were instead increased. We asked for parking charges to be reduced. Instead, they increased. We asked for a halt in the Avenues projects. Instead, they increased. Pre-election, we asked Labour UK to reduce business tax. It was increased by stealth, I might add, with the employers' national insurance rises. We asked for late-night exemptions for LAZ, still ignored. We asked that no visitor tax be implemented, ignored. And we asked that VAT be reduced, again, ignored. We asked that energy prices be brought down, ignored, and increased, mainly due to that total throbber who has net zero between his ears, that fossil fuel himself, Ed Millipede's refusal to remove the net zero tax on our bills and open up the North Sea. What an absolute gimp that man is. I've had it up to here with them all. Every week another restaurant, pub, club or gig racked with debt are pulling their shutters down instead of pints. Towns and cities across Scotland are becoming spiritless, empty and forlorn. Thousands of jobs are being lost and the unemployment figures are rising fast. It is as sad as it is avoidable. Recession, I fear, is just around the corner. Where business is concerned, UK Labour and the SNP have both forgotten who it is they represent and what they stand for, who it is that are the backbone and drivers of the economy, who it is that pay for their excesses, and for that, in my opinion, they should be held to account and punished at the polls. Sadly, due to the tribal, bitter, polarising nature of our politics, I doubt that was going to happen, either north or south of the border. But we must keep fighting. We must be keeping demand. We must demand that they answer to us. Now, I could not think of a better way to leave you than the joke I told you 2 years ago. Well, things haven't moved on, and neither have I, really. They've got a whole lot worse. My wife said to me that I make love like a painter. I said, what, like Da Vinci? Smooth strokes, attention to detail, and the result of a masterpiece. Not like the council. A rush job, leave a fucking mess, and I have to finish it myself. So,
Thank you, Donald. Before I ask Michael Bergson to come on, we're streaming this live in a number of places on X, and a big shout should go out to Elon Musk. I just think that he made that space public again, which was a very restricted and censored place. And I know some people don't like him, or his views, but I think that's really important. And we're on Facebook, but at the moment, YouTube have restricted our live stream. Now, the thing is, whether that's done on purpose or because of an algorithm, this is the Online Safety Act that was meant to be protecting children. And maybe because there's some keywords, Maggie Oliver, rape gangs. We also had a different thing suffocated before when we discussed the assisted suicide bill. Maybe because they thought we were trying to promote suicide. The irony should not be lost on anyone when we were challenging the right of the government to kill us. But it was suffocated and pulled down. And now YouTube is saying that this is restricted. I've just gone on there to look at our YouTube. So when all those people were saying that the Online Safety Act was to protect children, here we're seeing important expression and free speech by adults being suffocated and shuttered and shut down. And they're telling us they want to have a social media ban for children, the people who couldn't protect the children. But in the end, what it means is we'll all have to verify, like they've done in Australia, digitally, to prove who we are, to get on to speak in the public square digitally. And we're not having that, But this is outrageous and it's a scandal, and we need to keep reminding everyone why censorship is unacceptable. And all those people that we stand on the shoulders of that died for and were tortured so that we could have free expression, we're not going to have it outsourced to big tech by these technocrats who want us to be censored and shut down. It's unacceptable. So everyone, make sure you tag YouTube and say, get us back on. This is an outrage. And now, Michael Bergson.
Thank you very much. Nice podium. Makes me feel like Nicola Sturgeon during COVID. Oh, the power. As of the 2nd of April, you no longer have to wear a mask while taking a jobbie. Yeah, exactly. So my name's Michael. I operate 8 bars and restaurants in Scotland, and I've got a couple of former colleagues here, my old boss Lynn, my friend Gary, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, but I think we ran some great venues together. I think that the restaurant, bar and club scene, if things keep going the way they're going, is finished as we know it. Unless we stop what they're doing right now. The SNP, Scottish Government and UK Labour have completely shafted my industry. And Donald's covered a lot of it, but the bottom line is I think that we're going to be starting to look at city centres and towns where you've got nothing but fast food shops and coffee shops with touch screens and all this kind of thing, because they're just making it impossible to do what we do best, which is great venues, great music, easy to get to, and doing good food, training chefs and training staff. It's as if they want it to die. We had the longest lockdowns in this country than anywhere else in the UK. We had nonsensical rules made up like masks to the toilet, background music bans, council tiers, the lack of support and rates relief. Donald's already spoken about it, and the smashing up of the city centres, building psychopaths that no one's ever going to use, low emission zones, rates taxes. Donald, you got one thing wrong. Some of them have actually gone up as much as 500%. There was one venue in Glasgow where the rates tax was going up from £56,000 to £380,000, the rateable value. It's completely unacceptable. No, yeah, not the garage, thankfully, but it's completely unacceptable. You've now got rates taxes, pubs in Glasgow paying more rates tax than Amazon warehouses. It's nonsense. And, the stuff they tried to do. We've got an alcohol death problem in this country, and apparently the best way to solve it, they tried to push through laws which meant that all beer and booze had to be sold from behind a curtain. This is what the kind of things that they were thinking up. They did a consultation on that they were thinking of doing. And like Donald mentioned, parking charges, they wanted them to continue into the night after 6 o'clock. So it was just mental. But we could talk about a whole load of things. We could talk about how energy prices are putting so many of us out of business, and you've got Ed Miliband saying, well, the best way to solve this is to turn off your fridges at night. Serve warm beer in the morning. Just clueless stuff like that. And all this damage is being done in the name of two things: public health and the planet, and it's helping neither. But all this stuff is happening. Some of it's in a national level, some of it's in a global level, some of it's in a local level. And I'm going to talk about something today it's going to sound trivial when I start talking about it, but you'll see why once I'm finished. And it's the failed deposit return scheme, right? I promise you this is not going to be as boring or as uninteresting as what you think. It's basically an example. The government, under the banner of saving the planet, comes up with an idea. And in this case, they say if you're the producer of any drink, whether it's a can of soda, a bottle of beer, it could be a magnum of champagne, it could be a fine bottle of whiskey. Wherever you are in the world, if you want to sell it in this country, you need to give 20 pence to the government for every single unit. So that was the plan. Now, once you do that, you then, when you sell it to the wholesaler, they pay 20p. And then when they sell it to the shop, the supermarket, the pub, the restaurant, they pay 20p. And then the customer pays an extra 20p, takes it and gets it recycled and gets the 20p back from the government at the end of the supply chain. All sounds really simple, but here's where it all went really wrong. So there's three main problems. Problem one is it generates a huge amount of money for the government to handle. And we all know governments are bad with money. So if you consider, imagine every single warehouse, factory that's supplying all these bars, restaurants, supermarkets in the whole country. Imagine how many 20p's that is. The answer is it's about 28 billion a year. So that equates to about 5.6 billion pounds going into the government coffers. And as you know, the argument is that that money ends up getting given back to people. But the fact is, for every unit that goes in the wrong bin, think of the actual people that are littering, people drinking in the parks, guys drinking bottles of Buckfast and right before they go to smash it go, do you know what, I'll hang on to that tomorrow to get my 20p back. It's not going to happen. Girls going to a concert, drinking gin cans on the train. Oh, I'll carry these about with me until tomorrow so I can take them to a recycling plant to get my 20p's back. It's not going to happen. So all of that money for every 20p, that keeps with the government. So it's effectively a money-making scheme. Now, here's the main problem, which is problem number two. You have to put a politician in charge of all this money and all this process. And the Scottish government, in their wisdom, chose Lorna Slater from the Green Party. Let's hear it for Lorna. So, Lorna had to then go and set up a non-governmental organisation. She has to give people big salaries. Some of them are getting paid about $250,000 a year to handle all this, because that's what governments do. They just pay people lots of money. She was in charge of building bottle recycling plants, getting warehouses, spent millions on them, negotiating all the contracts with the bin companies. She got sued by one of them, tried to sue the government for about $200 million, and work out systems for recycling and get the reverse vending machines. So that all comes down to a politician, and the big businesses, they just eat these politicians for breakfast. And either way, it's going to end up costing you, the taxpayer, money, because you're going to pay too much for everything, because that's how it works. And then that brings us on to problem number three. Small businesses get hit the worst. So for instance, this grandiose plan of everyone recycling it included bars and restaurants, and the government gave all the contracts for your collection to Biffa. So see for instance, my independent bin company, who's a girl I've known for years, Vary, who's set up a small company, she was just swept aside to make way for the big boys. You know, you had situations where shops and supermarkets were getting forced to become recycling plants. So if you're a big supermarket, a big Asda, it's easy. You just put a bottle return machine in there. People take it in to get their 20p's. But what they had to do was, in all the villages and towns, and they had to get a small shop to have no choice but to, you know, someone walks in with 2 big bin bags full of cans, bottles, whatever, they have to literally stop serving and sort this out and give people their money back. And it was hitting all these small businesses, and the problem with that was the Scottish Grocers Federation actually turned around and said, see, by doing all this, you're going to put the price of groceries up. Because when you put in these layers of regulation and layers of nonsense, it means they have to hire more staff, takes up more of their time, and even the price of food will go up because of this. And one grocery owner from Scotland actually ended up launching a judicial review against the government, and he got his money back, and he won because he was able to prove that what this was going to cost him was going to put him out of business. So well done him. So you get these badly thought out plans, and the question is, you know, would it have helped recycling? The answer is no. British Glass, the the organisation that handles recycling of glass had worked out, well, in bars and restaurants, we've already got a system where 98% of all glass gets recycled, and this is actually going to make it worse. They'd looked at the detail and said, you're not going to recycle as much doing it this way. And the good news is that we all stuck together as an industry. We questioned every single aspect of it along the way. At one point, they were wanting even restaurants and bars to have no option but to be bottle and can recycling plants. So if Donald's in here on a Saturday night, his bouncers have to let someone in with a bin bag full of cans so they could get their 20p's at the bar. At one point, they were actually proposing that. It was nuts. This is the kind of shit they think of. It's insane. So eventually, it was kicked out because it was unlawful under the UK Internal Marketing Act, and it was going to make it harder for a drinks company to sell stuff in Scotland than it was in any other nations around the UK, but it's set to be rolled out in the UK. Eventual cost to the taxpayer of this aborted scheme was £300 million. So, again, 40 jobs were lost. But it's a familiar story, and we can see this kind of thing going along around our streets. We can look out the door, we can see it happening with our roads, we see it happening with our energy bills. Someone comes in, and an inept politician comes in with some utopian idea that you dare not question, and makes an absolute arse of it, and you pay the bill. Well, we're not having any more of it. Now, there is hope from this. There is hope that we can learn from this process. And that's why I wanted to take you through it. Because it's an example of how when you push back early and immediately, and as many as people as possible do not comply, you will win. And the first thing we've got to do is just keep talking about it. Digital ID, Alan, you're all over it like a rash. You heard Maggie Oliver there. If Maggie Oliver is not afraid to speak out against all these atrocities getting done, we can speak out as something as nonsensical as this. Now, me as a bar and restaurant owner, I'm very, very nervous about digital ID coming in and a government being in control that wants to control what you can eat, what you're allowed to drink, how much you pay for it, how many holidays you go on, and all that kind of stuff. We're not having it. Donald, thank you so much for keeping this amazing venue going. It's been harder for Donald than any of you can ever imagine. It's really important this place stays open. It's a massive institution in Glasgow. And Emma, thanks for taking the piss out of that wee bastard sturgeon. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Now I'm going to ask Emma, who is just going to not just perform, but also share some reflections on the situation with digital ID. So over to you, Emma.
Thank you. I joined up to the Together Declaration back when I seen them as a force for resistance against the madness of lockdowns and vaccine passports. And that was when my personal resistance against the tyranny of our government began. It's evolved since, as we watch as more control is ushered in under a number of different guises. When I heard this was called the Take Back Democracy Tour, I'm not going to lie, I must admit I immediately resorted back to a firmly held belief that too has evolved since 2020, that democracy in this country seems like a term used to gaslight us. The people continue to prop up a broken system as we funnel in money, clearly not quick enough to fill the black holes that our puppet politicians seem to create. Our politicians have been lying through their teeth to get elected, and it's my personal experience that many of them are avoidant and completely disengaged when they feel challenged by opinions, being happy to label people as conspiracy theorists and misinformation loons, even when presented with evidence. Many of us knew that digital ID, a cashless society, and 15-minute cities were part of the long-term plan years ago, and even further down the road, social credit systems and a complete overarching of control by those who are meant to govern what should be a fair and compassionate society. For the last 17 years, I ran an accountancy firm. My bread and butter was encouraging people to pay into this system, to navigate the world of tax and contribute to the broken system we're all part of. In 2020, my perspective in continuing to be part of that as a middleman and glorified tax collector for HMRC completely changed. And last year I sold my firm and quit a career in finance as I realised I had inadvertently become the grease between the wheels that keeps this system churning out more misery. Inadvertently, every accountant has been assisting HMRC and Companies House with their plan to create a world-leading infrastructure for digital tax. And I believe that will eventually link directly to your bank account and remove the last bit of autonomy that you think you have. It's almost upon us. And with every additional bit of compliance, each human operator, accountant, banking clerk, whatever role you play within the system, increasing compliance trains the human mind to remove themselves from the person. Compassion and fairness disappear as we become operators for the state. On the front end, digital ID is a tangible thing that is visible, the thing that we're geared up to fight against. But on the back end, the infrastructure is slowly being built to harness our information. Companies House introduced the Companies House One login. A lot of directors hold assets in limited companies. In fact, after HMRC changed the rules on property tax in 2020, restricting tax relief on mortgage interest, the most tax-efficient thing to do for many property investors was to set up a limited company and either transfer personally held property or buy future assets through this model. And 5 years later, cue the Companies House One login, a requirement to the first step of digital ID. If you don't sign up for it, you fail to meet your requirements as a director, as you're unable to then file statutory reports. Fail to file these reports, and then watch your company be struck off by the Crown and all assets passed directly to the Treasury. And there we have it, the leverage they need to get us exactly where they want us, all in the name of tax efficiency, all guided by people like myself who thought they were just doing their best for their clients by helping them pay less tax each year. In good conscience, I could not continue to be part of it. The right to feel free in this country is slowly being stripped away from us, but it's encouraging that enough of you care enough for us to be here tonight, because I truly believe in the power of community, the power of grassroots movements to shift opinion, to apply pressure. If I didn't, I wouldn't be here myself. And if it wasn't powerful, I think vaccine passports could very well be something that we would be navigating right now. We need to continue to do what we're doing, being the resistance, standing for fairness, and above all else, making our voices heard. We know that free speech is under attack. We live in a society where a social media post can see you behind bars, whilst paedophiles and rapists walk free. And our silence would indicate that we're accepting of the fact our judiciary can operate in this manner with free rein. This must be challenged in every way. I stand here tonight in the hope that more of our voices are heard. The more people like us stand shoulder to shoulder, the more we can shine a light on this darkness, and the less it is able to breed in the shadows. Thank you.
So what we're going to do now, we're going to have a little break. We're going to give you an opportunity to have some refreshments, use the bathroom, and then we're going to come back in about 10 minutes. So I apologise for the live stream. But then we're going to get into the questions for the panel that I'm going to do with them, and then we're going to come over to you guys. So we'll see you here just after past, and we'll see you very soon, guys. Thanks a lot. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if we can all take our seats, please. Forward a little bit if you want to. I mean, just so we're all a little closer, because we're going to do a little intimate conversation now. So if you're right at the back and you just come into the bit, we've got some space. You know, there's no coercion here. It's a suggestion. But and then hopefully Michael and Donald aren't in the cellar drinking the last bit of good wine in the gaff. Here we are. So once more, round of applause for our speakers, please, ladies and gentlemen. And so the way this is going to work, we're going to have a little conversation just about some of the issues that were raised, and I'm going to ask each of the panelists a question, and then we're going to come out to the audience. And when we do, you're going to come up to the mic here. You can just ask a question or make a point. And we're going to get a few people doing it in a round, and then we'll come back to the panelists and everything and do that. And that's how we're going to make it work. So one of the things that is very striking is you kind of think, why? Why? Is it ignorance? Let's start with Donald, about what's going on. Do you think that people that are running things in Scotland and in Britain generally are so economically illiterate? Do they not understand that the fifth biggest sector in the United Kingdom, hospitality, where young people get employed, where our soft power is, where we have such an impact in our streets and our communities, keeping them lit up and engaged, exporting things, music, our industry. Why is it there's not a recognition still, after all the lobbying and campaigning as well? What's going on? Or is it just that people don't care, they've got no experience? What's your view of the situation?
Can you hear me? Hello. It's a melting pot of all these things you're saying. You've got young political students that come in who haven't a clue. They've not experienced life. They do not know what they're doing, what they're talking about, but think they do. And that is a bit right away. They think they know what they're fucking talking about. They then meet up with the sort of old hacks who start to lose the way. You know, the old hacks, the old politicians have lost their way in power because they've made it there. And they forget what it was like when they were young and going out. Maybe they didn't go out a lot. And then they want to change, and they think that every fucking thing they do is going to change something. And that they totally forget to ask advice of people in the business. And this is not just in hospitality. This is in retail. This goes right across. You know, you look at Christ, they thought they could build ferries. I mean, it took 300 years or 200 years before the Industrial Revolution all the way through for us to master that craft, building boats, riveting them together, getting the steel plates, powering them across the oceans, and basically building the British Empire. And they think they can build huge, almost solar-powered or green eco ferries. Well, we've seen what's happened there, and it continues to happen. They think they can build tram lines as they did in Edinburgh. Look at the disaster at the beginning there. They thought they could build a parliament. Look where the fuck has happened there. And so that same thing happens with hospitality, that they don't ask advice, or if they ask it, you give them it. They then try to change the very essence of that advice to suit their political ambitions or policies without looking at the effects it's going to have. And that continues today. We have a government, I would say Glasgow has a council who, in their idealistic, holistic world, this utopia where everybody's going to be happy, walking through the rain and the snow on these lovely sort of slabs of broken concrete, you know. They think that everybody's going to want to cycle and get fit and smile at everybody. They actually believe that. They believe that shit. And they don't ask anybody, they don't ask their opinion. They don't even really put it in their manifestos. You know, the worst thing, abuse of that was Labour getting elected to power in the general election and not putting in their manifesto that they were going to increase the minimum and living wage way above inflation, not putting in their manifesto that they were going to hike up employers' national insurance, things like that, and so many other things as well. So they're incompetent. They're not business folk. And if only you got a government that would sit down. And I believe that, you know, I don't know what, I always liked Alex Salmon because he was business-minded. He was surrounded by business-minded people. And that fell away when Sturgeon came in. And, you know, now look at them. They're a mess.
And just leading on from that, just both for 7th of May and subsequently, how much do you think, there's two things, split question, this is difficult, but like a message that you would put out to them, but how hopeful are you? How much do you think that the Scottish public are up for some serious, significant change politically?
You're asking me? How much are they up for it changing politically? I think there's like everything in Scotland, there's a 50-50. You're going to have a dyed-in-the-wool nationalist that will not change for anything. And people used to believe I was a dyed-in-the-wool one. I changed, but they are hard and fast. Anything will go. They do not care about anything as long as they get the holy grail of independence, right? And behind that, though, and probably marching along is what they call the silent majority, where I think is going to come. You'll see the awakening of that the next election, whether that's Reform or other parties. You're going to see an awakening there. Now, that might good and bad, because I think Scottish Labour do have, in part, something to say. I do think the Scottish Tories under Russell Finlay has something to say, but I think Reform are going to smash through and be recognised. But you know what? Whoever votes for them, you're going to be a racist, you're going to be a right-wing thug, you don't deserve to, you're a fascist, you shouldn't be listening to, shut up, you're destroying the country, what the fuck are you talking about, go away, you know, and all the pally flag shaggers will be walking about, to be dead happy about it.
And hopefully the reputation that precedes certainly Glaswegians, but also Scottish as being robust and tough, won't care about names being called to them, right, if they're standing up. But I suppose the question leads on from this, because I think that, you know, in the past, if you think about the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, historically, the Labour Party used to be comprised of people that actually had a lot of experience. They were working people that knew trade, some knew business. They were good at, whether you agreed with them politically or not, they had real life experience, right? And in the same way, the Conservative Party had those people, and they've, in the last 3 decades, they've evaporated, and they've all kind of done PPE courses at certain universities. I'd like to see more people like you guys in politics. I mean, you've got a big enough job running businesses, right? No, seriously, yeah. And I think that's happening more and more across the UK. But just, Michael, I mean, if you could give a message to the people that are running Glasgow City Council, what would that be, firstly? And then, what would you like to see happen, secondly?
We're actually at the stage. We're actually at the stage with Glasgow City Council, whereas if they fell off a cliff tomorrow, the city would improve, and I really mean that. They actually need restraint. Government in this country, in Scotland, needs restraint. It's become too big. And we've had this situation where any organisation upon its formation wants to grow. And we've got this government in now under Nicola Sturgeon that just wanted to grow and grow and grow. I think the employees as civil servants have gone up 35% since lockdown, where the rest of us are trying to work out how we do this. and they really don't care about our industry. They only care about creating public jobs, and most of the time it's for doing nothing. And the Glasgow City Chambers is just sitting there. And anyone seen a film called Return of the Jedi? Every time I look at it, it's like Jabba the Hutt just sitting there gouging itself while everyone else is in this impoverished desert. And, you know, Big Susan the Hutt. And you just think to yourself, these people need to be stopped. And I don't, you speak about elections, but I don't think it matters in the colour of the tie anymore. It's just got to be issue by issue, put back, and don't accept it.
Go. Somehow I managed to switch it off. Emma, one of the things is I think you struck a chord because you struck a number of chords, but there's 50% of people who don't vote now. And that says a lot about our landscape. But obviously some people are very, very unhappy about things. And at Together, we don't think voting certainly is the only thing people should do. But people have fought and died for it. And as it happens, one of the reasons, if people thought things couldn't get worse since the lockdowns, and then we see what the continuation of things are, that's one thing that's important. Of many other things, campaigning, lobbying, protests, events like this up and down the country in the constituency, calls to action, having our voices heard. So this issue of digital ID as well, in terms of not just whether we would need passes to get in everywhere, but tracking our daily lives, data breaches everywhere, surveillance, controls, impositions. Just how do you see the situation yourself, from how you've been looking at it? You obviously think about this a lot when you're writing your poems and you're saying things, and the landscape. You were working in an arena where, as you say, that now we're going to be faced with quarterly digital returns if you've got 50,000 and then 30,000 and 20,000 earnings over the next 3 years. What would be your message to people that are listening tonight, and to people in Scotland in particular? What would you like to say to them to inspire some change?
I think over my career, I have certainly noticed a common theme, and that's been that people seem to work harder year on year and take home less and less. And that, I think, becomes the reason why people are so disenfranchised with the political system, why nobody's got any faith in politicians. At Holyrood, I think it was yesterday, they just unanimously voted for a £3,000 rise for every politician. Now, how can they, in good faith, sit and vote for a unanimous rise for themselves whilst every person in this country takes home less and less month on month? And I think people miss a trick. As an employer for all those years, I watched the national minimum wage creep up, and that was to be celebrated. People were getting paid more. But in actual fact, the personal allowance has stayed the same for such a long time that the only person that actually benefits from that rise in national minimum wage is the taxman, because the higher that goes, and for the longer that the personal allowance stays the same, the margin there that gets taxed becomes larger. So the taxman takes home more, but the man in the street thinks that he benefits because the national minimum wage increases. So I think people need to look at things a wee bit more. They need to maybe analyse things a wee bit more and think about who actually benefits in these situations, as opposed to just applauding the headlines, because that's what seems to happen. Even if you look at mileage allowance, for instance, the cost of fuel has rocketed over the last 10 years. But mileage allowance has stayed the same. Nobody seems to benefit from that angle. So it becomes harder and harder to be self-employed in this country. It's as if the encouragement is focused on being an employee, which again forces more control. I think politically, right now, I am sort of reserving where I nail my colours to the mast. For a long time, I felt politically homeless. I've been hoodwinked in the past by the SNP. I think the next couple of years is going to be a very important period in politics in this country. I don't want to disengage with it, because I think our voices are very important. People have asked me to get involved in politics. Reform approached me last year. I don't really trust Nigel Farage, so that wouldn't be something that I would be considering. But I really feel like a lot of politicians they might get into it for the right reasons, but they very quickly become busy fools because they are caught up with the red tape and compliance that exists. So I will continue to be a thorn in the side of my local politician, and I would encourage everybody else to do the same.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask if people want to speak. By the way, if you're a member, put your hand up in the audience. Keep your hands up. Right, everyone else, give the members a round of applause because it's because of you that we're able to keep going, and thank you. That's why we can see. We don't have big donors and big backers. When people say, "Where do you get your money from?" We get it from all our everyday people who believe in what we're doing. That's how we keep campaigning. So if anyone's not a member and you're here and you agree with anything, please do become a member. We've got the QR codes up there. You can speak to Rose and some of the volunteers. And thank you so much, Rose, and the other volunteers for tonight. That's also how we keep going. So you can speak. She's got a hand up there in the corner. You can talk to her. We'd love you to join. So if you want to ask a question or make a point, you can come down to this microphone here. Come up and you can go there. And you can. We're going to do rounds of questions. So, yeah, if you, Josh, and any others, Theodore, I only know people's names because I've just spoken to them tonight. But you can come up one by one and we'll do it. Just to say, on the question of energy, we should have energy security. We should not be limited to that. And the question of North Sea oil and being robust, just like food independence and food security with our farmers. And the obsession with net zero mania is suffocating us all, is our opinion at Together. And we've done, and Glasgow City Council, its approach, we've done reports that have been published nationally, like Ben Pole's approach on the discussion of so-called clean air strategies, which are really cash cows and suffocators. And it's really important we keep making our voices heard locally, regionally, and nationally. Do not underestimate how much of an impact it makes when you email and phone your MP and you post to them. When they started getting 10 and 50 and 100 and 1,000 people doing that, and councillors who only get voted in by a few hundred people, and they think they're going to lose their position, and the party thinks it's going to lose their position, they really start listening, as well as all the other stuff we have to do throughout the year together to make ourselves strong. So please don't underestimate that, and we've got to keep active and win people over. Right, you can say who you are and say your question or point. We'll go one by one. Yes.
Hello there, everyone. My name is Jessica Gunn, and what I was going to ask you, Alan, is how could I deal with people who are in the universities mostly lean towards left, as I'm a centre-right individual, right? And how can I get these lefts to instead of being woke, right cousin, right, more awake, but get this campaign going? And how can I get this promoted to university I go to? Get your campaign going, raising the good awareness you have done.
Good question. I think it's a really important question, and we're going to come back. We're going to take a round of them. But the question is, for everyone at home as well, how can we get the point across to people who have different views? And I think it's a really good one because often people are trying to cancel people and suffocate them. Look, just quickly on that one, but I want to go through to everyone and bring it back to the panel. Our view is that we have to play the high game. And even when people are trying to cancel and suffocate, we fight back. We argue for freedom of speech. We work with people like the Free Speech Union and many others, and we campaign for that. But we believe in our fellow citizens. We believe in common values and common sense. As Thomas Paine and others wrote about, we believe that people are not evil who disagree with us. We've got different ideas, and that we are able to be convinced of them. There's some dangerous times going on where people start thinking that you're evil, and also that if you don't agree with us, we have to do something, not just verbally, but physically. That's terrible. We do not want to see that trend happening in Britain. Any place that has seen what civil war's like knows that is not what we want. And those that are advocating that should be ashamed of themselves. And those at the Labour Party that want to call millions of British people racist and far right and scum, are absolutely part of the problem. We're not in that game. We think that people can be won over to ideas, and we have to win them over to ideas, and we have to be brave like Maggie and like the people up on here and like you guys, and we have to go out and risk being called names and being ridiculed, but say that this is too important not to do that. So that's how our approach is. So thank you for that question. It's a really good one. Thank you.
Yeah. My question, I'm Theodore Holtham, and I run some businesses in Glasgow. And my question is also about fundamental values, actually. We had Maggie Oliver speaking about rape earlier. And, you know, part of rape is forcing something on someone against their will. It's coercive. And actually, if you want to talk to left-wingers, you can consider slavery, because slavery is another example of, you know, pushing something on someone against their will. For me, the digital ID is the Labour Party reintroducing slavery into the UK, because we know the system will be a slavery system. But I mentioned to you earlier in person about Companies House One Login as a business director myself. And actually, that's what my question is about. I wanted to ask everyone, you know, in the Together movement, can we do more with freedom of information? I myself, I've run my business for many years and did the online web filing of the annual return confirmation statement and so on, no problem online. And now I can't log in. So, a reasonable alternative already existed, the web filing system, but they're trying to force me to do a different way, the one login. Well, I found the paper forms and filled out the forms in paper and posted it to them, along with photocopies of my passport and driving license, witnessed by my neighbour, who's known me for 15 years, and confirmed my documents signed in person. You know, what better method of confirming someone's ID is there? Again, here is a reasonable alternative, but they want to force on us the one login. Well, for the first time in my life, so they came back 2 months later and said they wouldn't accept my papers like that. I've got to do one login. So for the first time in my life, I decided to do a freedom of information request, and I would urge others to do the same. And so I said, well, yeah, okay, I'm considering the one login system as I am, right? And but to do due diligence, I would like to ask to see the data protection impact assessment, which is required by law. So now they came back with some, in my view, insufficient information so far. But one of the points they said was they couldn't answer my question about what subcontractors have been involved in the system. And they said, well, that I would have to go not to Companies House, but to the one login team. This in itself is a bit strange, because it's Companies House that's asked me to use this system. So why wouldn't they know this information? But now I'm following up with the one login team. It's ongoing. My question for you then is, can we do more collectively to use freedom of information law to gather information, see where the weakness is? I'm personally presently doubting that they've done it correctly. Therefore, the system might be illegal.
Yeah, good question, and we'll come back to that. Thank you, Theodore. Very good. Next one, we're going to take a round.
Hello, my name is Thomas. I don't have a question. I've got a point to make. It's really interesting. It's a bloody book recommendation, but it's really a good book, actually. Before I say which book it is, I want to say a little bit. I think a lot of us want to wake up people, but I think that's the wrong approach. I think 80% of the people will never wake up to anything. It always has been like this and always will be, and it doesn't really matter, because we only need a minority to change things. So the book is called, it's advocating peaceful change, of course, despite of the title. It's called Regime Change from the Right. So it's not advocating to topple the government. It's not advocating for violence, obviously, but it is by far the best you will find on this topic. Obviously, Together is doing a good job, but anybody else as well. can read this book and then find your place within it and try to act upon it. So it's called Regime Change from the Right by Martin Sellner. Now your Facebook live stream might have been cut off because when you type his name into Facebook, it shuts off. And yeah, it basically lines out how we are enough people, we are millions who are fed up with the state of things. We have enough skills, we have enough finances, but we're not organized. So we need to get organized. Together is already doing this and doing a very good job with this, but we can always improve it. And so I really recommend Regime Change from the Right by Martin Sellner. If everybody read this and tried to act upon it, I think we would all do a much better job than we do now.
Thank you. Maybe we need to get him on a podcast. Next one.
Thanks very much, mate. My name's Ian. I'm from Glasgow, Denniston. My question is kind of multifold. So I see something happening in the UK, and I think if people have got their eyes open, they can see it too. Extreme abortion up until birth. I know you're very much against this, Emma, because I've been following you in X. Murdering babies just as they're about to be born, right? Woke ideology, telling people they can change their sex, right? And we all know what the main problem is in this country, right? It's not the Hindu community, it's not the Sikh community, it's not the Christian community, it's not the Jewish community, it's the Islamic community. Right, let's just call it what it is. They're coming over here, raping their wee lassies, right? And as a Glasgow guy, I'm not willing to take that. I'd be willing to go to jail to fight against these people, and I'll put that on record, right? Is there any way that we can do away with a stigma of Islamophobia? What can we do? Do we just need to speak out in mass against it? Because it seems to be a real issue in this country, and it's starting to get people really, really pissed off.
Thank you for the question. We'll come back to that. Yes, Josh, yeah, and then one more, and then we're going to come back to some of these questions. They're easy questions. Not.
Hi, my name's Justin. We run a trade title for the hospitality industry. We work with MacLeod and the rest.
Speak into the mic, please.
I'll try and kneel down, right? So, sorry, my name's Justin Wingate. We operate a trade title to the hospitality industry across the UK. I can kneel down if that's better. There you go. I'll try and not repeat that thought a third time because you probably got the first two, right? But it was two kind of observations and I've got and a question. I'll keep them very brief. Myself, Michael Donald, and numerous other people across the industry have sat in meetings with party leaders addressing the challenges in the hospitality industry over the last few years. And there's something that stood out above all else for me sitting in those meetings. And it's the lack of accountability that they take and sit and having the conversations. And it's almost as if they kind of clap the people in the room and talk about, we'll take all that on board and we'll have another meeting and we'll sit and get together again in a couple of months and we'll discuss the points again. And I think that's going to be part of my question to the guys. I already kind of know the answer, but do you feel that that's the case where the industry as a whole is starting to wane because they feel as if they're banging their head off a brick wall, constantly having the same conversations? And this isn't, as Michael said earlier on, this isn't a party thing. It's not about the colour of the tie. This is across the board. And what it seems to be, to me personally, is more of a self-preservation issue. That every politician, when they get into a certain situation, whether they're getting closer to being in power or they're trying to vain for that or keep their own position, they seem to be more interested in what's in it for them than what they're actually doing. One of the other things that we've found recently is we sat with Sacha Lord and put together, anybody that doesn't know Sacha Lord, he was a kind of event host and quite prominent. He's now become quite a prominent aspect in the hospitality industry across the UK. But him alongside Andy Burnham worked to make Manchester probably one of the only cities in the UK that's experienced growth in the hospitality industry, or the city, roughly about kind of 20%, by using hospitality as an industry as a core to grow the city and grow the economy. He put together a 20-page document to provide to Glasgow City Council and ride to Susan Aitken on how Manchester has managed to achieve this without things like LEZ, incorporating transport, using hospitality as a way to help drive the city. And we presented it to them, and Susan Aitken's response was, we don't need any advice, we're doing great as we are. And that was their exact words. We've got it documented and everything else. That's in a city that's currently a council that's operating in absolute millions of debt. So, as I say, I want to take my hat off to the guys that are here, Michael, Donald, and another legend of the industry, James Mortimer, sitting here as well, that's helped shape the city and shape Glasgow from a hospitality perspective. And as I say, we just need to keep striving to do it better. Thank you, guys.
Right, I want to just, thank you, Justin. It's really important. I think we come back on that. I know there's some more people who want to speak, but I think it's really important, that question, however you want to answer it, but also when people say they're going to do something, and then are they actually going to do it? Because I think it hits all the points that people are concerned about. But do you want to respond to that point or any others, Donald?
Yeah, sure. And it's a very good observation, Justin, and we've talked many times about it. And it's multifaceted. This, I mean, Scottish Government, SNP, I've sat in many meetings with them. I've actually held a few round tables in the Parliament with them. And if cross-party members there, and if the SNP send a minister, say like Ivan McKee or something like that, they'll sit there and do the nodding donkey, and they'll understand it, and say that they're listening, and yes, we'll go away and look at it. And it's only in recent times have they went away, go and look at it, and then actually try to advance policy. Funny what an election on the horizon does. But all the other times, he would have to go away, toddle off, and go up the stairs with the ivory tower to the ministers, his boss, to get approval, and we'd never hear anything. So that's the way they operate. They send a lackey, I do like Ivan, but they would send a lackey such as Ivan who would sit there, listen, and you could tell he was getting more as frustrated as some of us round the table, and he had no power. They're not given power. That's got to go to the High Hegians and back in the day, Nicola, and the cabinet to make change, to make effort. Similar situation along at the council. You've got Susan Aitken and Angus Miller, and they're the ones that will look at it. And you've mentioned Andy Burnham and Sacha Lord. Andy Burnham, Labour. Sacha Lord, former Labour. They're not interested in that. They're not interested in the success of others. They think they're better, as I said earlier. They think they know everything, and they march us down this road of ruin and debt, as you say. So that has to change. I will also say this, though, because the trade bodies, and great friends with them all, from the SLTAA, Scottish Hospitality Group, UK Hospitality Scotland, and the NTIA. They go along to these meetings. You know what pisses me off? They're comfortable at these meetings. They're not disruptors. They don't really drive home. One meeting, yeah, they should say, see if they don't get the answers by the second meeting. They should be driving the points harder. That is my belief. And I feel let down in that regard, that they get comfortable, too comfortable with the feet at the table, or the seats at the table and the feet under the table, and nothing improves. So it becomes they don't want to upset the ministers or the MSPs or the MPs in attendance, so therefore they don't, and they play this diplomatic game. And to me, a result of that was, oh, what a great success, 2,000, all these businesses getting 40% or some getting 100% rates relief. But the major employers, the ones that, if you put the small, 200 or 2,000 that didn't get the money to get, outweigh all the small ones by far in terms of turnover, in terms of cost, in terms of debt, in terms of needing help. got nothing. And but that was treated as a success. Sorry, I wasn't fucking buying it, and I've told Mike Greaves and all these other bodies that not for me. That's not why you're at the table. You're meant to get the rates relief or the deal done for everybody, not just the few. So,
thank you, Donald. If you give the mic to Emma. Emma, do you want to respond to any of the points that were made? Some reflections on it. Take the mic, please.
I think somebody touched on the legislation that's just been voted in the House of Lords recently. So that was sort of termed as abortion up to birth being legalised. If you look into it a wee bit further, it decriminalises the act of abortion by the female herself. However, that legislation will be sure to evolve over time. And I see it was actually quite ironic that that vote went through in the same week that the assisted dying bill vote was put forth in Holyrood as well. So if I'm honest, I genuinely thought that the assisted dying bill was going to go through in Holyrood, because I see this again as the complete overarching of control and the demonic act of taking life. And I feel like when you talk in that manner, people again look at you as if you're some sort of crazy person. But how else can you explain an act like that? To take human life away before its first breath, or to take the life away of the elderly, the sick and the vulnerable by handing that right over to the state. I just think we are in very dangerous times just now with legislation like this even being lobbied.
So, as always, I've got a lot to say and we haven't got much time. I'm going to ask some questions about the hospitality and also about this question, because I think we can have very different views on a number of these topics, and there can be principles involved within it. But I do think that one of the huge furies of the British public is that when we've got questions or when we're not happy about things, we're called names or we're told to shut up or we're taken down and silenced. Because we're able to thrash out ideas about, and really concrete issues that are really go to the core of, like, should the state be able to kill you? This is the suicide bill. Obviously, many people are very well intentioned, right? They don't want people to suffer at the end of their lives, and I completely understand that. And anyone, as many of us have been unfortunate enough to do, see someone suffering terribly, it's very terrible to do it. But then there's a question of principle within all of it. And there's also a question of principle about the issue of women and control of their body versus the rights to life. And people have very strong views about it. We must be able to thrash them out and disagree and argue, and then not say that people are just evil and have to be silenced or worse. And that's essential for our future together. I mean, I think one of the things is as well, my lobbying career started, I actually am a co-founder of the Nighttime Ministry Association, and I actually was the person who introduced the idea of nighttime czars to Britain. We brought them over from Amsterdam and Germany, the Berlin Club Commission and the Amsterdam Nightmare. Mirik Milan showed Boris Johnson them originally, created a task force, then it went into Purda, and then it was Sadiq Khan. And then did that in Bristol and Manchester with Andy Burnham. We got Sasha, I got him on the board, and we got him in to do these things. One of the things I said to everyone was, don't just appoint people that you agree with politically. Be courageous. There's a deficit in the public with a trust. Have someone that pokes questions that will say things you don't agree with. But none of them did. None of them did. And Sasha and Andy Burnham had a bit more of a working relationship. And to Andy Burnham's credit, in this particular issue, they did listen to some of the things. And they saw that there were places like Ibiza, like Las Vegas, like a few other cities that were music cities, Amsterdam and others, that Berlin, that had transformed their economy by embracing hospitality. If you go to Schiphol Airport, there's a whole festival that's around nightlife, and they welcome you, and they know it's part of all aspects of their economy, of what it means for transport or what it means for culture. But in the end, they appoint people that are not going to challenge them. And that then leads you to a mad situation of what we had in London, where the key issue was with late night venues and needing to have them, and precisely to your point, to say the things that people, you might think they don't want to hear. And I've got to say, when we first started it, we were that gobby thing. We told the police and the council the truth, but we said we had to have them sitting next to us. And this is the point about having respect for people. You've got to be able to tell people the truth. You've got to have honesty and integrity and trust in our fellow citizens that you can argue and you can thrash it out with a common purpose of getting something better. And that's what we're missing. And that's what we're missing when YouTube take us down, whether it's because they're purposely censoring it or it's an algorithm. That's what we're missing when we have two-tier policing in a state that says we can't have juries or the rights to appeal or post things that we want or go and do certain demonstrations. And that's what we've really got to fight for. And that's partly what the digital ID question is about, and much more. And that's why we need to keep making this point about free speech and our abilities to do things. I want to come to you now, Michael, because we're going to have to get back out, and these are big questions. But really, it seems to me that you guys could be part of UK Trade PLC and actually representing us internationally as well as in Britain, because the fifth biggest sector, we're stuffed if we lose the farmers. If we don't have our hospitality in towns and cities, guys, you know, the Specials did that song Ghost Town, but the implications for employment, for second and third sectors that are impacted, all of these things are astronomical for us. So just some reflections on what you've heard and responses to Justin or anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, one of the issues that I spoke about earlier was they were wanting to put parking charges up in the, believe me, this is going somewhere, parking charges up throughout the night from 6 p.m. And what happened was the trade bodies got together with the Scottish Business Federation, and we got all the restaurant and bar owners together. Now, the reason I think that this was a massive U-turn they had to do, and the reason I believe they shot a brick was because we had all these communities involved. All of a sudden, the guys that owned the chippies, the Italian community got involved, the Chinese community got involved, the Indian, Pakistani restaurant owners, and all these little pockets of every single community where there were influential figures within those operations got together and pushed back, and the government shot a brick. And if we are going to push back on a lot of these things that are getting put upon us, we need to do it as one community, and don't let them divide us. Now, when I say divide us, I'm very, very suspicious of any politician that tries to squash debate in the name of, oh, that's hate speech, or it's bad, or you're a climate denier, you're a racist, you're this, you're that. I'm also very suspicious when politicians start organizing mass religion events, because they're not doing it for anything else but votes and to keep us divided. That's what I genuinely believe. I don't actually think they're doing it for that reason. And I think that one of the things we got to do is we're all one community, and we've all got to push back on this in unison right across the board.
Thank you. Right, I can see there's a couple. This is going to be the last round, guys, and we're going to carry on talking in the bar unofficially. So there was a lady there. There's a guy there that's been waiting patiently, I think, in the orange T-shirt, then a couple more. Thank you.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, everybody. My name's Brenda Holiday, and in spite of my accent, I have lived in Scotland for 50 years and grown to love it here. I've been filling in my short tax return for as long as I can remember, and I now do it for my son, who is a self-employed welder. He works extraordinarily hard in a dirty job and arrives home at night exhausted. He conforms to everything he can do regarding health and regulations and what have you, but administratively he's a dead loss, I have to say. So I do his tax returns as well. Well, I might be a bit slow on the uptake, but I've only just realised that now he could be obliged to submit his income and expenditure receipts every 3 months. I mean, is there anything that can be done to step back from that? It's crazy. The bureaucracy, the burden of bureaucracy placed upon self-employed people is getting beyond a joke.
Well, very well said. We'll come back to that. I think that guy, did you want to speak in the orange T-shirt? Yes, you come forward because you were waiting patiently, and then there's, yeah.
Hi there, Gary from Glasgow. I wrote a wee thing once we were sitting up there, so I thought I'd share it. Call it Freedom from Within. Let's take it back, elbow crack, the real deal's back. As Bonnie Scotland sends a signal to summon the scum into full view. To gather their shit, time to pack. Your number's up, you've got the sack. Fair play, he's had a good try, but you picked the wrong land for these traits to ply. Sure, I can't fling my granny off a bus, but I can certainly give you and your crew a leg and a wing back to your king. And never mind, just don't waste your breath with your cringy legislative excuses that are an absolute embarrassment to any soul with ears. So take your bullshit books and your sneaky Betty tricks back to the island with your monstrous crooks.
Thank you very much. Good. We've got a varied contribution. I think the gentleman there, yeah, and then the man with the scarf, and then I think that's going to be it, unless there's any other people.
My name's Billy, and I represent a new charity in Scotland for vaccine injured, COVID vaccine injured, right? And here, this is the point I want to make, right? We're just starting out in our journey, and it's no politicians that are a pain in the arse. Do you know who's a pain in the arse? The bureaucrats. See, they're the roadblocks, right? And I'm just going to share one example, right? We recently had a meeting, me and Mr. Alec Mitchell, with a public health consultant, right, for Lanarkshire Health Board. And we made it clear why we were there. We wanted help for the injured and clinical pathways for them, right? And we told them that we've been chatting on doors for 5 years, right? And these doors are shut. Here's his answer. The people behind the doors that you're chatting, they've got different priorities. They're worried about the fact that nobody's taking vaccines anymore. So what you need to do, your charity needs to do, your charity needs to advocate and tell people that vaccines are safe, and then you might get behind the door. That's what these people behave like, mate. And see, they people, they're the real problem in this country. Bureaucrats, right, who are taking my money, your money, and all your money to tell us to F off. I've had enough of these people.
Thank you. Rob Tyson, one of the key people at Together.
Hi everybody, great to see you all. I've, like the Proclaimers, travelled 500 miles to see you from Devon in the last couple of days. Just wanted to say a couple of things. Thanks so much for everyone's efforts. We've all been campaigning together against digital ID. We had a climb down on that. We've got to keep that going. I also just wanted to maybe give one for discussion, just a little counterpoint to Maggie Oliver, actually. How many fans of the UK COVID inquiry in the House? Not too many. So is it a great idea if we force the government to put everything that an inquiry writes into law?
Thank you, Rob.
I wasn't going to come up, but when I see my two boys there, who I've been involved with for many years, and I'm great that they're taking the fight on, but I've had the fight on here for 30 years. I ran the best entertainment place here in Sauchiehall Street. The street was beautiful, it was great then, and this area had a club nearly in every street, and they were full 7 nights a week. And the difference now in the city, which is happening to me, I'm now involved in all my charity work, and my phone never stops. Do you see Glasgow the way it's going now? I just dread for all the restaurants, bars and everything. In a few years' time, there'll be nothing. I fought the campaign here for 20,000 flats to come into Glasgow, the same as Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool. they told me, away you go, they're different countries. We needed people in to spend money. Nobody listens. And to see what they two are doing to keep this fight up, because I feel terrible for Glasgow now. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask to go this way. I'm going to ask you to sum up. It's going to be impossible to ask, but in a couple of minutes. We can carry on this conversation in the bar, and this will continue. But any of the things that have come up, or last thoughts on what you think everyone can do and where we're at, if you would, Mike.
I think you've heard it all tonight. I think Emma's saying, be a thorn in the side of your MSP, your MP. Doesn't matter what party they are. Doesn't matter if you voted for them or not. Keep on at them. Like James says, it only goes downwards unless we all stick together, all as one on every single issue, and just keep pushing back, because that is what they're scared of.
Thank you, Michael. Emma, no, you go. You just want to do the poem, yeah? All right, go on, Donald.
Well, I echo Michael there in what he's just said. I think somebody just fallen there. Stuart, somebody's just got. Whoops.
Okay. Oh. They got security there.
Obviously, a wee bit concerned this happening in my place. Just hope they're okay. Right, I echoed what Michael was saying, but to me, I've always, if I see something wrong, feel something wrong, I've always spoken up. I've got a big, good, strong Scottish voice in my head. And I think as we go into these fractious times, and it's going to get worse, more divided, more polarised, as we come up towards this election and beyond, because it's going to get worse, we've got to stand up and be counted. We can't be silent anymore. If you're fed up with what your politicians is doing or not doing, as the case, you've got to let them know. You've got to let your neighbours know. You've got to let know your friends know. We've got to stop putting up with this shit. And really it is a mire, it's a quagmire of shit that we're going through at the moment. And getting accused of being racist or right-wing and just name-calling, that's got to be put to the side. You just got to march on. So you've got an election coming up, make your voice be heard. You've got a local MP, you've got a local councillor. Let them know how you feel. Because unless you do that, they'll never know. And even if they ignore you, let them know again. Just keep badgering. That's the way I've worked. That doesn't always pay off, but hey, they do listen. So that's my advice.
Before I bring Emma to do the last poem, I'm just going to say a couple of things by way of wrapping up. Just to say, on a number of issues that together everyone around Britain has had an enormous impact. We got the Department of Transport to stop funding livable streets. These low traffic neighbourhoods, 15-minute cities. But the new Labour government then pushed ahead, and we know in Scotland they pushed ahead with some of that as well. But we won that, and we continue to fight it. We got a stand back by the FCA and the Bank of England to allow to not shut down banks and to have cash. We also did a big campaign against debanking and helped create a situation where now it's going to be illegal to debank people based on what they said. We worked with the Free Speech Union, Us for Them, and many others to do it. We got a U-turn with the farmers to stop the imposition of IHT up to a certain level. Yes, it's still there, but now it's 5 million, not nothing. We need to keep pushing further. We got a turnaround altogether on mandatory digital ID in the workplace immediately, but of course with one login and 6 million directors, they're pushing it, as they are with children, and we need to keep fighting. When we stand together, we get things changed. We've got stand downs on issues around net zero. When we started saying no to net zero, people were saying, wow, that's crazy. You ever going to win that? That's so radical. Now, everyone knows the gig's up, except for Mad Ed Miliband. Now, at the end of the day, this is what it's all about. It's about us fighting and challenging and standing together. I know we can win this, but we've got to be courageous. We've got to be passionate in the same way that every day people put their lives on the line here to make Glasgow and Edinburgh a great city. Same way Maggie Oliver has the bravery and passion. We, the everyday people in Britain, in Scotland, in Glasgow, up and down the country, Edinburgh, Aberdeen, everywhere, that we stand together and we insist on our fundamental rights, and that we say in the coming up election on the 7th of May, where do you stand on this? And we hold every councillor or potential councillor on the stump accountable, and we make our vote and we let them know based on where they stand on digital ID, on net zero, on the rights to jury and appeal and free speech. And we make those points to them and we hold them accountable. And we also send a message that it's not just about this election, it's also about what's coming subsequently, and then we're going to fight for it. Now, if you're prepared to do that and get your friends and colleagues and neighbours involved in that, that is a massive contribution to the body politic of the United Kingdom. So I'll leave this with you. In the end, it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Some people say, well, it's all done. We know that Keir Starmer's trying to rejoin the EU. We know he prefers Davos to Westminster and Brussels by the sounds of it. Right? We know that there are big international global powers that would like to see us squashed. But what are we going to do? And are we going to take the spirit of those of our forefathers that fought and put everything on the line? And are we going to be courageous? And are we going to step forward and do that? Or are we going to be rolled over? I put it to you, everyone, that we all stand together and we win this together. I know you can. I have confidence in you. I have confidence in you all back over there at home watching this on a stream. Let's stand together and let's make it our time together. Thank you very much, everyone. And now we're going to finish up with Emma, the wee Glesga Poet.
Last poem of the night, word crimes. I hope you see it now for what it is, these riots that have been brought to our towns, because it's more than just mindless acts from brainwashed, hate-fueled clowns. It's become another way to push for control, fast tracks through court for their crime. And the judge, he'll throw the book at them. For punishment, they'll serve their time. And within that crowded court schedule, appearances for the day, criminals up for thought crimes, persecuted for having a say. For we need not worry or fear about conflicting views, rather worry about the restriction we face on those words we're allowed to choose. I might not agree with everybody, left or right, or sit on the fence, but the right to speak truly and freely, I will always stand in defence. And yet here we are allowing it. I'm all right, Jack, it's somebody else that faces a stretch in isolation for word crimes down in the cells. So the tipping point is right about now. Are we going to let our thoughts be policed? Because I tell you, there's only one way you get your freedom then. Good night, you are deceased.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Donald MacLeod, to Michael Bergson, to Emma Armstrong, all the staff. And remember, the 25th of April, Saturday 25th of April, if you want to be involved at Edinburgh, please see Rose or any of the volunteers. We're going to have a big Scottish contingent as part of our Four Nations rally against digital ID before the vote on the 7th of May, Saturday 25th of April in Edinburgh outside Holyrood. Thank you very much. Let's stand together, everyone.